My name is Laurence McGonnell. I am the lead chaplain at the Leeds and York Partnership Foundation Trust, which is the mental health trust in the Leeds and York area. So when somebody asks me to describe myself, I find it so easy to kind of slip into defining who I am through the title that I have, because it's something I wear, but it's also not really who I am as a person. When I look back over the years, times when I had a bit more hair and a bit less of this, I find that I've had so many different titles. I have been a teacher, I have been a student, I have been faith community leader, I have been the lecturer, I have been the counsellor, I've been the psychotherapist, I've been a clinical supervisor, I've been a department head, I can give you a list of different things, not because I think all of these are amazing things which tell you something about me. These are things, clothing which I wore and I've put aside, but who am I? What does this language really give you a connection and an insight into who I am as a person? I don't think it always does. I think sometimes it gets in the way rather than helps us to understand who the person is in front of you. But it doesn't, not just me, I can look at the person in front of me and say, I've just given you a title as well. You are the patient, which talks about the power dynamic between us as well. What if we were to be creative and imaginative and put those things aside? What is it that you need from me? My sense over the years is that what people need from me is to be a curious companion, to walk alongside them as they try to make sense of their journey and their story, as they try to find ways of expressing themselves. They may have had problems or troubles. They may have had labels given to them by other professionals as well. Labels I find useful to an extent, but when they start to get in the way, let's put them aside. Let's look at the person in front of me and let the person in front of me see me as well. Two human beings, face to face. Heart speaks to heart. Let's listen to what this other person has to say, how they need to tell their story. So I will be a curious companion. I will walk alongside you. I will listen to what it is that you want to say, what it is that you feel you need to say. But not just that. I won't be an empty receptacle. I need to also receive that as something sacred, something deeply personal to you, to who you are, because it's part of the uniqueness of your journey and your story. One thing I've learned is that although I come from a faith background, I am a person who holds very strongly my sense of faith, and that influences me in the way in which I engage with other people. But I can't assume that with others. So what can I assume? I found that, if I take the word spirituality, for example, let's take the word spirituality. If you go to Google and you put in the word spirituality, you get something like 1.2 billion hits. Huge, an enormous thing. That was the last time I checked. It's probably bigger than that now. But what it tells me is that there is an enormous conversation taking place out there about that word spirituality. So where on earth do we begin? Well, my sense is, let's kind of pull it back. Go to the origins of that word. Where does it come from? That word spirituality finds its roots in a Latin word, spiritus, which means breath. Now, isn't that interesting? That's something we all share. Whether a person is religious or not, or very religious, or on the edge of things, it doesn't matter. We share breath. So the starting point of being alongside a person is not that there is a condition that you have to be like me or I have to be like you, but that we share something basic to every human being, which is breath. And so from that I can say, well, what is it that breathes life and meaning into this person? What is it that breathes a sense of connectedness to themselves, to the world and to others? Perhaps in other words, we could say, how do they make sense out of life and all the ups and downs of life? Nobody gets through life without wounds and bruises. We all have wounds and bruises, but some much more than others. And if I am to walk alongside somebody as their curious companion, compassionate curious companion, a caring curious companion, I need to ask myself, how do they make sense of it? What does it mean for them? You know, being a curious companion for another person, but there are two other words which constantly come up as well in the context of chaplaincy, in the context of supporting people, being that curious companion. One is the word faith, and the other is the word religion. Now let's peel those back a little bit. Faith, an interesting word, from the Latin fidere, which means to trust. And the second word, religion, from the Latin religare, which means to bind unto or be connected with. So suddenly, instead of going into a person's home, which I've never ever done, or into their room or to their bedside and said, what religion are you? What faith are you? What's your spirituality? And what religion are you? What's your spirituality? What's your faith? I've never asked those kind of questions. The first question I ask people usually is, what's the story? What's the story? Tell me the story. What brings you here? What is the journey in life that has brought you here? Because we may not share a faith, but we share breath. So spirituality sharing breath. Each human being, every human being I've ever encountered, needs somebody or something that they feel that they can trust. And each person that I've ever walked with, they need somehow something that they can identify with, that they feel that they belong to or are connected to. And those things, suddenly I realized that we're looking at human experience in a different way. We're not making any assumptions about we share the same faith, or we share the same culture even. We share the same skin color or something. You know, the things which we're very good at pigeonholing. But if I can resist and discipline myself to stop pigeonholing another person, listen to them, be the curious companion, it's incredible what I learn. Every person I have ever learned with, every person I ever walked with, I learned something from them. Every day is a school day for me. You know, in the hospital, if we've got 50, 100 beds, and we put, 50 Roman Catholics, 50 Jews, 50 Afro-Caribbeans, 50 East Africans, 50 Asians, 50 whatever it is, each of those people are going to be different, and each story is completely different. And when I have that opportunity to be alongside people, I find that I don't only just receive and hear the story, but I learn something and I grow through that. And if I can communicate that I receive something sacred from that person, there's something healing in that. There's something very powerful in receiving genuinely and in the most unencumbered way that I possibly can. If I can receive their story and they know that their story is being received, then there is something very powerful and very healing about that. I think something which is really important to me when I think about, because we are moving from a monofaith to a multi-faith model within the Trust. So listening to a story through one set of lenses, to looking at story through multiple sets of lenses, multiple sets of life experiences. What is it that people who all have a place and a role within our community, what is it that they bring to the table? I think perhaps one of the sets of assumptions as well that can be out there is that when you're a chaplain, you're there for the patients or the service users, as we refer to them in our trust. But actually, no, it's not only the patients, it's also family members, it's also carers, it's also staff, it's also volunteers. Why? Because together we connect our stories. Together we make something new by listening and connecting up the richness of the stories that we have. We have a vision that we want to move forward with this in a creative way. It's interesting, coming from a Christian, perhaps also a Jewish perspective as well, the very first verb that you hear in the Bible is the verb to create. Boroshit bara Elohim et hashamayim va'et haaretz. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Create is a very powerful word which acts in a way as an invitation to us to look through creative lenses, not limiting what we have in front of us and constricting one another, but finding ways of expression. What if, for some people, the strength of their story is not in words? What if the strength of their story is not in verbalizing it? What if the strength of their story is in presence? What if the strength of their story is in symbol? What if the strength of their story is in art? Can I give you an example of a patient that I worked with? Was a fascinating person who was a refugee from another country who struggled with English, but also the poor woman. She was an incredible young woman who had sadly developed a brain tumour, and that brain tumour was pressing on a part of the brain which also governs the use of speech. And so she was frustrated. She was living away from her country of origin, away from her family. She had become sick. She struggled with the limitations of speaking in English. She struggled with the limitation of understanding the world, the very different world around her. And we got her to work with an art therapist. And a lot of people think, well, I'm no good at art. It doesn't matter how good you are. It's about expression. It's not how good you are. But with this lady, she discovered actually she was really good at art, and the work she produced was incredible. And that was powerful. And I sat with her and said, I wonder what would happen. How would you feel if we put some of your pictures on display in the chapel? And put a book there and just allow other people to say what strikes them when they see your pictures. And she said, okay. So we put these pictures on display. The idea was, the agreement was that they'd be there for a week. When I tried to take them down a week later, there was almost a war. I got into trouble. No, leave them. And people were writing how they saw each of those pictures. And that was so powerful for that young woman, that suddenly we had looked for a creative way of giving her voice and expression and empowering her to speak her truth to others through her pictures. I could have applied for a role in the job which allows me to use my title, my psychological training, but I've chosen something which is chaplaincy, and chaplaincy is often looked at as sort of a bit kind of lower down the pecking order. Not much power, but maybe I don't need to be encumbered by power, and the power that comes with titles and roles and things like that, but something which allows me to divest myself of that in order to be alongside people in the best and most creative way that I can be. So that's the way in which I see, that's the way I see the future. I've done all this, the other stuff, been there, got the t-shirt, all that kind of thing. Where I am now, I'm kind of keen to put that aside, put power and authority to one side, but rather just to invest in just the genuineness of being alongside somebody. Sometimes I don't have, most of the times, I don't have an answer. But I don't think people want me to have an answer to their problems. They don't want me to fix them. They want me to be alongside them. They want me to walk with them. They want me to hear their story, to receive their story. They want me to work with them to find ways of expressing their story and their journey. They want me to help them, to work with them, particularly when they themselves have that experience of being outsiders. That makes me more determined and more focused to say, these are the people who are prioritized in when I reach out to support them, to find a way which works for them. Not that I've got a bunch of solutions, but what do you need me to hear? What do you need me to do to support you so that you feel empowered, so that you feel you are able to tell your story of your journey? What do you need me to do? How do you need me to be alongside you in order to express your truth? I think that has to be my path as I move forward, but it also has to be very much the ethos and the flavour of a multi-faith system, a multi-faith chaplaincy system and model within a hospital. It has to be one of empowering at a very deep level, not a superficial level, but a very deep level. And to my mind, there is something deeply sacred in that.